It is winter 1675, and all of Europe has heard word of the astonishing victory of Turenne at Turckheim, and the destruction of not one but two Imperial armies in a single swoop. Every aspect of the story, from the frigid march across snow-capped mountains to the French feint on its right and centre, before the hidden ambush on the left, has captivated courts, noble mansions, and common taprooms alike. The coffee houses of London and the Kaiserkellers of Bavaria abound with men reading from the news sheets, while in Versailles King Louis himself regales a ballroom with a letter Turenne wrote him 2 months before the fateful clash, extolling his exact course of action and the uncanny prediction of how the general's opponents Bournonville and the Grand Elector Frederick William would react to his maneuvers. The letter compounds the established opinion that Turenne is a sort of military savant, and his status and popularity now almost equals that of the Sun King himself. When the general returns to France in the very early spring, he is garlanded each step of the way. The inhabitants of every town, village, and municipality come in droves to do him homage. It is said that Paris has never witnessed a scene like it, when he is greeted by a royal retinue of welcome, and he travels to the holy houses to give thanks. Turenne, somewhat overwhelmed by the ovation, is nonetheless touched by its warmth. Now in his 60s, he is looking forward to a quiet retirement with the House of the Fathers of the Oratory at Paris. But if Turenne hopes for respite in the wake of his victory, his enemies have no such inclination. France celebrates, but across Habsburg Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Netherlands, fresh armies are mustering, munitions are stockpiled, and new commanders are appointed. The new year will bring with it new campaigns, and revenge is foremost in the minds of all. As the spring progresses, the various theatres coalesce into 3 main arenas. Once more, Conde will lead the main French armies against the Prince of Orange in Flanders. At the same time, Brandenburg, stung by the Turckheim catastrophe, has switched its focus to the menace of Sweden, and the Grand Elector will take his forces to the north and campaign against them. Meanwhile, Emperor Leopold searches for a new champion in which to entrust his army of retribution against France and his archenemy, Louis XIV. He finds it in the person of Raimondo Montecuccoli, the Italian private soldier who has progressed through the ranks since the age of 16 to command imperial armies from the Rhine to the Danube. Montecuccoli's list of actions reads like a roll call of every major battle in recent history: Breitenfeld, Lutzen, Nordlingen, Wittstock, Chemnitz, Zumarhausen. He has fought both Swede and Turk, been awarded the Golden Fleece, and every honor that the Holy Roman Empire can bestow. 2 years previous, he outmaneuvered Turenne and made it to the Low Countries, seizing Bonn in the process. Now he is back, and Louis XIV has no one else to which he can turn in response, with the exception of the hero of the moment. Turenne is brought before the king, entrusted once more with the fate of his nation. In the second week of May, after an all-too-short respite, he departs Paris and makes his way back to the killing fields of Alsace. At about the same time, Montecuccoli is moving at speed through the Black Forest, the Rhine Valley, and eventually sets up base at Willstadt. With his reinforcements added to the remnants of Bournonville's army, he tallies a host of 18,000 infantry and 14,000 mounted troops. Turenne's roll call at Schlettstadt, 12 miles north of Colmar and just under 30 south of Strasbourg, is far fewer, possibly only 20,000 in all. His army is after all the secondary royal concern, for the Netherlands remains Louis's primary focus. And with the introduction of a new stamp tax to pay for these wars, France itself is now subject to riot and revolt. Turenne's own primary concern is the city of Strasbourg, for he knows that Montecuccoli has been in correspondence with its elites, and they are sympathetic to his cause. With this in mind, he moves his army to Achenheim, a mere half-dozen miles from Strasbourg, and there he sends a strong enough signal to the city that they can expect no help from the Imperial general, whose army is still on the opposite side of the Rhine. Montecuccoli is in fact just across the water, but his forces are not entirely collected, and he cannot make the crossing before Turenne's arrival. Now, having lost the race, he decides on an alternative strategy and marches to Philipsburg, some 50 miles or 80 kilometers north, in a grand show that he will make his crossing there. It is a worthy attempt, but Turenne is aware that the greater part of Montecuccoli's now intact army is still at Kell, awaiting the moment that the French take the bait and abandon Strasbourg to intercept their general. Montecuccoli even goes to the effort of crossing the Rhine himself on the last day of May, but still Turenne refuses to jump. And the Italian is forced to embarrassingly withdraw once more and reconnect with his host. Still, Turenne menaces his main army like a still bull guard dog. A week after Montecuccoli's crossing of the Rhine, Turenne decides to take the initiative, and he moves to Ottenheim, quickly builds a pontoon, and crosses to take possession of Willstadt, the former Imperial headquarters. With this move, he has now blocked any crossing Montecuccoli can make at Kell, and from there threatens Strasbourg. Unperturbed, Montecuccoli marches his own force to Offenburg and then makes a foray along the Schutter River, seemingly launching an assault on Turenne's pontoon to cut him off on the wrong side of the Rhine. Once more refusing to react to a feint, Turenne keeps his force steady and calmly transfers his bridge further up the river. Montecuccoli has seemingly run short of options, and another week goes by with the two sides in a stalemate. This situation suits the French, for Turenne merely wishes to save his country from invasion and, if the opportunity presents itself, destroy Montecuccoli in battle, just as he did Bournonville. A war of maneuver does not suit Montecuccoli, however, and the campaign season is ebbing away before his eyes. Worse, his army is running short of supply and forage. He withdraws again to Erloffen and then eventually pitches up at the confluence of the Rhine and the Rhine, about a day's march from Strasbourg. From here, the plan is to have rations and supplies sent downriver from the city, but Turenne once more claims the edge and seemingly manifests himself at Freistadt. There, he requisitions boats to intercept anything destined for Montecuccoli. He also occupies several Rhine islands and positions artillery emplacements to blast holes in the Imperial ships that attempt to run the gauntlet. By this point, Turenne appears strong to the Imperials, but his army is also running short of food and forage, and the unseasonably wet summer is damaging morale. The Rhine Islands and riverbanks are very damp, and the main army camping area is said by the men to be located in an actual marsh. The combination of summer temperatures with wet, stagnant water leads to a growing spread of illness. There are elements of Turenne's army who begin to dissent at the situation, but the veterans put them in their place and tell them to trust in their general. "He is our father," the French soldiers say. Although Montecuccoli has lost the tactical duel, he now has an advantage over Turenne in that he can be supplied to some extent from across the Imperial lands to the east, whereas the French are stranded on the far side of the Rhine. Turenne needs to do something to break the impasse, so he elects to move up the Rhine and further isolate Montecuccoli's communications. This would entail crossing the river, and Turenne spends some time considering the means and location by which to make the transfer. Eventually, a local shepherd is found who can point to a ford in the Rhine through a wooded area. Turenne reviews the site, and he sees that the wood and the ford are a mere 500 paces from Montecuccoli's camp, but overlooking it so that the crossing is unseen by the Imperial sentries. Once night comes on the 15th of July, Turenne sends a brigade to cut a path through the wood, and then his men begin construction of a bridge. This takes 3 full days to complete, but the Imperials seemingly remain completely unaware of the action the entire time. Remarkably, it is said that not a shot has been fired in anger by either side since the start of the campaign. Turenne has already an earthwork built to protect the end of his bridge, as well as increasing the fortifications at his new main camp. Leaving 3 battalions as a holding force in his previous base, and using 2 Irish battalions to guard the wood line from the enemy, Turenne moves his army across in the night once more. Montecuccoli's reaction on discovering this clandestine action is only to be imagined. Now he is almost completely cut off from Offenburg, his route of retreat should he require a withdrawal, and Altenheim. With French bases at Willstadt, Freistadt, and the new camp by the bridge, Montecuccoli now finds himself driven against the Rhine, all but encircled. He reflects and makes the decision that he now needs to fight in order to give himself some hope of survival. He decides to follow Turenne in organizing a night action, and on the 23rd he sends 4,000 men on a roundabout mission to attack Turenne's bridge, while at the same time, his main force will attack the French camp on the lower level, and a force from Offenburg will attack it from the rear. Another mobile force under the Duke of Lorraine sets off to make a wide sweep and attack the right wing of the French camp. The main attack company embarks for the bridge in the dark, and it is arranged that they will signal the onset of the combined offensive by firing 4 mobile cannons simultaneously. Thus alerted, Montecuccoli will launch the primary action. The Imperial general and his men wait in expectant nervousness as the night ticks on and the air goes colder. Hours pass in this excruciating anticipation. They hear some small arms fire in the distance, but the big guns needed to initiate the offensive remain silent. His advance attack force have faithfully followed their guides up into the high ground and around the wooded area, but incredibly, the company never finds the bridge, although the terrain there is shrouded in a mist, and they return to the main camp where an infuriated Montecuccoli awaits. There are some who believe that the guides have been bribed by Turenne, but in any case, the Imperial situation has now become acute. It is made worse when a bedraggled Lorraine later reports back of his own ordeal. Completely unbeknownst to the Imperials, Turenne had been at large in the night, and he had secreted himself near the bridge. Knowing that Montecuccoli planned an action, he set off in the mist to surprise him. The Duke of Lorraine thus watched with some stricken surprise as the French soldiers emerged out of the murk and opened fire on their supposed secret march, the 60-year-old French general in the midst of the action. In spite of their consternation, the Imperial troops managed to fire and score a greater number of hits on the enemy, and the fighting continued until the dawn began to break. At that point, Lorraine realized, likely from the French standards, that it was in fact the main French army with whom he was battling, and he made a withdrawal. He left behind 100 of his men killed. These were the small arms shots that Montecuccoli had heard in the night. Turenne had followed Lorraine cautiously and took possession of Gamshurst, east of Freistadt. Thus, the French have now almost completely encircled the Imperial army on one side, while they are hemmed in by the Rhine emplacements on the other. It is a masterpiece of strategic maneuvering from Turenne. The morning after, a skirmish between Lorraine and French advance troops convinces Montecuccoli that he needs to withdraw, and he decamps to Bull. Turenne hears of this movement, and he decamps to Aachen. He feels like a chess grandmaster, just a few short moves from checkmate. Montecuccoli seems to be unaware of Turenne's progressions, for when he arrives after another march to Salzbach and is pleased to link up with his troops from Offenburg, only then does he realize that Turenne is already at Aachen. This puts the French just a mile away. They would be visible to the Imperials if the weather was seasonably clear, rather than damp and overcast. It is a frustrating situation, but Montecuccoli feels that Salzbach offers a relatively defensible redoubt, which he fortifies further by occupying the church and the ditch that surrounds it. This gives him an excellent firing line onto the valley path leading up to the town. But Turenne is not so easily rebuffed. The next day, the 27th, he heads out on horseback once more to survey the landscape and enemy positions. His survey of Montecuccoli's emplacements around the church are not encouraging. The barricades and the ditch, as well as the building itself, render the position unassailable. So Turenne rides on to examine the Imperial flanks. Finding a rise over Montecuccoli's right, he looks down and sees that it is another warren of ditches and added Imperial trenches, as well as streams and wooded areas. Turenne takes the disappointment in stride and rides around to the Imperial left, and it is there that he finds what he has been looking for. Montecuccoli has completely failed to fortify the ground on his left flank, and more gratifying still, Turenne locates a narrow pass or defile around this side that will lead his forces directly into the valley, where lie the greatest concentration of the Imperials. "It is done," he reports to his commanders after arriving back from his scouting mission. "I have them. They cannot escape me. I shall now reap the fruit of this fatiguing campaign." So confident is Turenne that he writes to King Louis and shares the news that he will shortly vanquish his enemy, sending a messenger with the note that he will write again after his victory. After issuing orders to send an advance party north into the defile, Turenne then unhurriedly has his lunch, dismounted under a tree, the weather for once allowing some moments of repose. So that Montecuccoli does not become suspicious of a lack of activity from the main French host, a front line of infantry and a reserve of cavalry line up before the Imperial positions at the church and its surrounding environs on a wide line. These companies are augmented by artillery pieces, and a perfunctory fusillade begins from the French. Basking in the warmth as he finishes his food, the crack of the first shots of the day reach Turenne. Fully 50,000 men will be engaged between both sides, and Turenne is positive that with his forces positioned as they are, Montecuccoli has no opportunity to slip away. He will either surrender his host or be destroyed. Standing and dusting himself off, Turenne remounts and informs his staff that he is going to view the action, as he may need to make adjustments to his formations as the day wears on. He tells these men to stay behind, as he does not wish for the enemy to have an easy time spotting him. His nephew, the Vicomte de Lorge, is among those he tells to wait. Turenne rides on with just the Irish-born Duke of Hamilton. The Imperials have begun firing back at the French in the main line, and at about the same moment that Turenne is ascending a small rise near his own artillery from which to view the battle, the Imperials realize that the force in the defile is in the process of completing a flanking attack. Turenne and Hamilton crest a rise by the cannon, and the exchange of fire across the battlefield increases exponentially, as Montecuccoli realizes the danger in which he finds himself. Musket fire crackles like dry wood thrown onto a bonfire, as the Imperials fight to stop the incursion from the defile. The artillery duel is in full flight, cannons blazing all around, and Turenne calls forth his chief of artillery, Armand de Saint-Hilaire, and has him reposition some cannon onto another rise nearby. Saint-Hilaire rides with his young son in tow, and he wears a splendid red cape. Turenne knows that Saint-Hilaire also possesses good eyes, and has him ride forward somewhat to clarify a number of enemy positions for him. While he is gone, Hamilton urges Turenne to move back, for he is in a place of danger, Imperial rounds exploding and bouncing off the ground close by. "I will do as you say," Turenne says, "for I do not want to die today." After he moves back a stretch, Saint-Hilaire rides back up to him, and the artillery commander points with his hat and arm outstretched, asking if his commander is satisfied with the new displacement of the weapons. As Saint-Hilaire speaks, Turenne follows the line of his hand, and at the moment he is about to reply, the artilleryman's entire limb explodes in an eruption of blood, bone, and flesh. The men in the vicinity are thunderstruck at the injury, Saint-Hilaire's distraught son rushing to aid his stricken father. It is a second later that the group realize Turenne is tottering. He moves forward once, then again, but falls before taking another step. Hands rush to grasp him. He has been struck in the midsection by the same cannonball as Saint-Hilaire, and is grievously wounded. "I do not want to die today," he tells those around him. There is further chaos on the other side of the line. There, Montecuccoli is also leading from the front, while his men mount their defense against the French attack. And as he is riding along the line, rallying them to fight, a cannonball shoots his horse out from under him. Montecuccoli miraculously survives the shot and stays in the line, awaiting what he presumes will be a storm of French infantry and cavalry coming in from his left flank, while the front keeps his companies in the center and right occupied. On the French side, the rank and file continue to fire and follow their strategic directives, but in the general's headquarters, there is confusion. Turenne's nephew Lorge assumes command, but this is disputed by other officers, most notably the Marquis de Vaubran, officially the next officer to Turenne in seniority. The men's bickering is overshadowed by the grief that is now uncontrollably spreading through the ranks, from the rear echelons right up to the front lines. As Saint-Hilaire and his shattered limb are being tended to, his son breaks down in tears. The father upbraids the boy, saying, "Hold your peace, my child," and indicating Turenne's covered form, "There is something for which the whole world should weep, and weep forever." On the Imperial side, Montecuccoli has begun to wonder why the French offensive has not begun in earnest, and all of Turenne's attacks now appear to have tapered. Word reaches him from a French deserter of Turenne's fate, so nearly shared by himself, and the Italian takes a moment to grieve his worthy adversary. His words echo that of Turenne's own men. "Today died a man who did honor to mankind." The French rank and file are despondent, and the lines begin to waver and then pull back. Their withdrawal is orderly, and the Imperials do not leave their still safe bastions to make a pursuit. There are many who wish to be led on the attack Turenne envisaged, to avenge him and vanquish the enemy, but the squabbling between Lorge and Vaubrun means that there is no one to lead them. At one point, the veterans call for the attendants to loose Turenne's horse toward the enemy and let him lead them, but the day ends with no action, and any lingering fury in the French resolves itself into grief. Soon they will be joined by the entire Gallic nation and the court of the Sun King. But for the moment, Montecuccoli remains in place, knowing that his enemy has lost their tallyman. Will he attack and destroy the French in their moment of weakness, or will Louis and his ministers manage to settle the differences between Turenne's commanders, or appoint a new general in time? From assured victory after another masterful campaign by its titanic general, France is once again in mortal peril from its aggressors across the Rhine. If you like what you see, consider supporting my work on Patreon, and you get ad-free early access to my videos for as little as $1. You can also show your support by liking the video, commenting, and subscribing to my channel as a sacrifice to the algorithm. As always, I'll see you in the next one.